Hey guys, this is Untitled Lego Maniac. Be sure to check out my other social media accounts and my Patreon. Links are down below. Hey guys, this is Untitled Lego Maniac and welcome to another customizing minifigure tutorial. For this tutorial, I want to talk about sanding and the proper way to sand, what type of sandpaper I use, or other sanding materials. And you get to learn some of my tips and tricks, and just a little like a lecture on them. Now we are going to talk about what do we use sandpaper or like files or these types of materials for minifigures, and I'll carefully explain and be very specific, so that way you guys can actually learn something and apply to it for your own minifigures. So without further ado, let's just continue. So here I have right here, I have this type of sandpaper right here. Now all sandpapers, there are different types of sandpapers. There you have the coarse ones, which is around 40 to 60 grit. You have the mediums, which is 80 to 120. Fine, 150 to 180, very fine, 220 to 240, extra fine, 280 to 320, and super fine, which is 360 and above. So here I have the 800 fine sandpaper. I had the I believe it was either very fine or extra fine. It was one of those. It was a bit rougher than this sandpaper, and the reason why I use that is so that way if you want to take off more materials, especially for hairpiece or for torsos, you can use that. And if you want to get like nice smooth detail, just to remove printing off legs, so that way when you paint on legs, the paint won't chip off, I go with the 800. I do recommend. I don't have the rough sandpaper with me though, because I ran out, so I have to buy more. But you guys have to work with me here. All right, so here's the sandpaper that's pretty much been used, and there's still some left. I mean, I can still use this area right here if I want to like erase like some fine details. So we're going to talk about the simple, answer this simple question. Now, the most popular question I get, anything with minifigures, is how do you prevent the paint from scraping off from minifigure legs? Now, I have this minifigure here. This is Sinon from Sword Art Online. Sword Art Online is a terrible anime, but hey, Sinon is the only good character, which is why I'm making her. Now, what I did, alright, here's a pair of flesh legs I gave her. And you notice that the paint is chipping off. That's what happens because when you move legs, the paint chips off, blah blah blah. So there's a good example. Now, for some of my minifigures, sometimes the leg assembly is pretty loose that it won't chip off as long as I don't apply too much stress on it. But most of the times they do. They always scrape off like 90% of the time. How do I prevent it? Simple. I just take like the fine grit sandpaper and I just lightly sand it. Do not. Now there's a technique on how to sand these minifigure parts, and you have to be very very careful. Some people will just rub back and forth with the straight wrist and just have an arc moment. If you do that, what you're gonna end up doing, you're gonna sand off more on the edges more than the area in the middle. So to properly sand, you have to be very very careful. You have to be very very gentle when it comes to minifigure legs. Because yes, you want to make sure you get rid of like the top layer per se of the plastic. If you sand way too much, you're not gonna get a smooth arc, and that's not what you want to do. Take a look at Ross's figure, for instance. If you've seen his like ordered customs, there's like a huge gap. Well, it's understandable why. It doesn't look that good. There's the problem, and sometimes I had a problem with that myself, which is why you gotta make sure you have to be very careful. So let's just sand this right here. You guys can see it. When you sand, make sure it's completely flat on the sandpaper and move your wrist in and out. Make sure your wrist is relatively straight. And do not do this or that. Just one solid motion. And by the time, now you can see there's a little bit, it's like chipping off. So you can see it's a little bit flat here. Now, do not sand in one position more than multiple times. Gotta make sure the leg comes in towards you, like that, as you sand, so that way you can still have that nice smooth arc. And always check to make sure. Now when you reach up to this point, that's when you should probably stop because you don't want to accidentally sand off the toe. Now to sand off like the bottom part of the leg, it's simple. You just need to make sure you just gotta put the sandpaper on the edge of the table like that. See that? And just pretty much sand this right on the edge. Same motion. And when you sand, make sure you tilt the leg away from you. And when you're done, you should have something like this. Now, if it doesn't look like a smooth arc, feel free to sand off a little bit more. Just be careful. So there we go. So that's how I sand the minifigure legs. And if you paint on top of it, the paint shouldn't scrape off. Now, if it does, just sand it just slightly a little bit more, but overall it should be fine. Now another question I get asked is how do I sand the female's torsos if I don't buy the airlight curved torsos? The simple answer is I use these pair of files right here. Most specifically, this file right here. It has a flat bottom and a curved arc. This is a file that I use a lot for when I make like curves for female torsos. Now the other files I use, I do use them for other specific purpose. This one right here I used to file down like the bottom of the torsos, like for like Megumin for instance, because I ran out of sandpaper and I wanted to make her torso a little bit smaller, so that's what I used. I also just use this for vision, so that way I can sculpt some Procreate on the side right here. Same technique I did for Aquaman. This file here is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is it has a pointy tip, which I don't really use often. I pretty much use these tools the same way. I just use this a little bit more because it's easier because it has this edge. This file right here is just pretty much just a little long cylinder. It has a little pointy tip at the top though, which makes it easier for sanding in certain areas, like the whole of the minifigure leg, for instance, if I don't feel like sanding off the top. I don't know what the fuck I use these for, to be honest. I don't use these often. This one kind of has like a triangle shape pattern here, and this one's like more of a square. The only file we're going to focus on for today is this one, the arc on one side and the flat bottom on the other. Now I'm going to show you guys how I make curved female torsos with Xenon. Now before you get started, it's good to have some sort of like a paper towel on the bottom here because dust is going to get everywhere. Oh yeah, I highly recommend you wear a mask. I should probably invest in a mask myself. I probably need it if I want to make projects and stuff for class, but hey, whatever. I highly don't recommend breathing any of these things like cocaine. Alright, it's not as fun as cocaine. Now just like sanding legs, there's a certain technique you need to follow when you're curving female torsos, when you're filing them. Now you have to make sure the torso is on its side, just like that. Now you notice like with Lego minifigure torsos, there's like a flat side right here before, and then there's this like angle before it reaches this angle part here. There's like you pretty much need to follow this line. You'll know it when you see it on the torso. Alright, so I moved the camera so that way you can see it easily. I try to make sure I use my eye to figure out like the bottom part of this file right here matches along with the line. And then once I get that, then you start filing the torso. Now just like sanding a minifigure, you have to go really slow, and this will happen a lot. You're not going to get an even side. You're going to end up like whatever direction you're sanding, that's going to be the side that's going to get filed the most. So you can see right here, you can see this side's getting more of the plastic like cut off, but more so than the other side here. So the way to counteract this is make sure when you push forward, you put more pressure on the back. So you're filing the back. Then when you come back, it's the opposite. Kind of little seesaw motion here. Now be careful not to sand too much of it. If you do, you'll end up breaking the torso, and the middle part here is going to be extremely weak unless you're going to wrap it with fabric, like what I did for example. Ram and Rem, for instance, I filed their torsos, and also it was covered with fabric, so that way you won't see the hole, and also it gives like better protection. So I'm going to continue filing this torso. Now, because Sinon doesn't have like a trench coat or anything, she has a really short jacket that doesn't even reach her hips. I'm going to be careful not to sand too much off. We're going to sand off just a little bit more. All these like white powder everywhere. God, I miss cocaine. So you can't really see it right here, but that you can see it in the middle. It looks like the plastic is just about is going to reach its breaking point. That's the point you have to stop. If it looks like the plastic looks a bit lighter in the center, that's when it's like, okay, the plastic, yeah, no more. Stop abusing it. So make sure you use your eye and look both sides to see if it looks even. If it does, you're good to go. If not, then file off the side that still has the most plastic. Just so I'm gonna have to file just a little bit more here. Be sure to wash your hands because your fingers are gonna get really dusty. And do not breathe this in. Seriously, do not get close to it. Now, we're gonna do the exact same thing, but for the other side. Remember, use the bottom line of the minifigure torso as your guideline for the file. It is important to follow the guideline and make sure you know how much you sand off the minifigure. Like, it's better to count and make sure you apply the same pressure every time you file the torso. So that way it'll make sure you know that if it's symmetric or not. It gives you a good basis. Yeah, that's the one thing. Symmetry is very important. If you screw up on the torso, well, you can't just like start over. This isn't like, you're not living in ReZero. This is not Groundhog Day or Edge of Tomorrow. And if you screw up, that's okay. Just give it another try. When I first started filing a torso, I had to do it like at least 3 times until I get it right, before I start making like Wonder Woman or like Harley Quinn back in 2016. I believe that was the year I started doing the curved torsos. And now this year I'm starting to do boobies. And it's good to make sure you keep the print on the minifigure if you do, so that way it can give you a general idea if it looks symmetrical or not. Looking at it right now, I just need to file just a little bit more from this side. And on the back looks, it actually looks good. All right. Alright, now the torso should be even and it should be ready to go. Alright, now to clean your file, it's better to just wash it. What I do, because I'm a lazy fuck, I just like wipe it with a paper towel, just at least try to get most of it out. Grab your nearest trash can. Here, for instance. This is my cum bucket. Just beat the devil out of it, like Bob Ross. Oh shit, I dropped it. Beat it like it's Natsuki. And wash your hands and make sure you don't inhale any of that stuff, because you're gonna get high. Hugs, not drugs. And with the remaining excess plastic you have, make sure you just simply wipe it off. I use a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol, so that'll get a lot of it off, and it will also remove the printing as well. Which, if you guys want me to do a tutorial on that on removing printing, let me know. Anyway, that's it on the tutorial, guys. Now, you guys, I was able to teach you the files I used. You can get this at Home Depot. You can also get Sandpaper at Home Depot as well. Remember, make sure you get the extra fine one. Those are the ones I recommend. But if you want something a little bit rough, if you want to, get rid of like a lot of plastic, then go with like below 800. But make sure you always use 800 at the end, so that way you can smooth out the surface. Never use sandpaper when you're removing face printing, because what sandpaper is, it's pretty much like little tiny rocks. Think of it like little tiny rocks rubbing across the plastic. You're gonna create rough edges. Now, even if you don't see the rough edges, or no matter how small it is, when you paint on it, when you try to remove it, you're gonna regret it. Only use rubbing alcohol for removing printing. The only time you can remove printing with sandpaper is for legs, which, by the way, I actually just painted this, and let's see if the painting scrapes off. It kind of does. Well, that was a fail. But you get the general idea. Just to make sure you just keep sanding the leg, and you should be good to go. So that's it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'm gonna do some drugs now, and see ya.